Call the meeting to order. This is the January 27th, 2021 regular session of the Schertz Planning and Zoning Commission. Item number 1 is the call to order. Item number 2, seat alternate to act. We have Mr. Odom with us this evening. Item number 3, hearing of residents. Anybody sign up? Nobody signed up. Anybody send anything in? Nobody sent anything in either. Okay. Item number 4, the consent agenda. We have one item on the consent agenda, and that's the minutes from the January 13th, 2021 regular meeting. Commissioners, do we need to pull this for discussion? If not, we'll entertain a motion.
A motion to approve the minutes for January 13th, 2021 as presented.
Second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Greenwald, a second from Commissioner Ray. Call for the vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 7 ayes, none opposed, motion passes. Item number 5 is a public hearing. Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing for ZC 2019-010. Hold a public hearing, consider and make a recommendation on a request to rezone approximately 229 acres of land to Planned Development District, PDD, generally located approximately 6,000 feet east of the intersection between FM 1518 and Lower Seguin Road, also known as Bexar County property ID numbers 309419, 309811, 310011, 310013, Bexar County, Texas. Okay, we'll start this with a presentation by staff. Nick?
Good evening, Commission. All right. Nick Copier, Senior Planner, Planning Division. So as you said, this is a zone change for approximately 229 acres of land to Planned Development District. Just for some background quickly, here's an aerial map just so you can see the existing conditions on site. So the Saddlebrook PDD subject property is this boundary in bright green here. Just to the west, if you can see, this is the existing Ryan Valley subdivision. To the south of the proposed zone change area is Lower Seguin Road, and to the north is Rafe Burnett, which turns into Schaefer Road here, going towards 1518. The subject property and the surrounding properties largely either undeveloped or agricultural land, with thoroughfares to the north and south, and then to the west, obviously, is that PDD with single-family residential as the primary use. In preparation for the public hearing, we sent out the notice mailers to every property owner within 200 feet here. And so of the property owners within 200 feet, we received 10 responses, 9 of which were in favor to the proposed zone change, and 1 was opposed to the proposed zone change. This is a copy of the current zoning map. As you can see, the Saddlebrook property, which you can faintly see here with a gold star, it's this area. It's currently listed as DVL, which means Delayed Annexation Development Agreement, so it's not currently within the city. All the tracts are under the agreements that would that are set to expire in August 2021, at which time they, per the original agreement, would be annexed. But they are currently going through annexation proceedings at the same time as this zone change, so they would be annexed into the city if this zone change approved. So looking at the overall zone change proposal, so this is a zoning exhibit provided by the applicant. It's a little bit easier to see the boundaries than our existing zoning. So this purplish color over most of the subdivision means that it's not within the city and under the agreements. And then this red strip along Lower Seguin Road, so this frontage, there's about 12.5 acres of land that's currently within the city and zoned single-family residential agricultural, but the remaining 217 acres are outside the city, and the proposed zone change would place all 229 acres under the PDD, the Saddlebrook PDD. So to start off, looking at the conceptual plan, so the primary uses you're going to see within this PDD are obviously single-family residential. You can see the first one here listed under this legend is the garden home kind of variety, which are around 50 lots, and the remaining just under 600 lots are various lot sizes of the detached single-family residential land use. You also have commercial land use here, around 3.5 acres where Lower Seguin Road would meet the future extension of FM 3009. And you can see they've proposed a couple of private parks throughout the subdivision totaling just under 5 acres. And then they have a bunch of open space and drainage corridors that connect throughout the subdivision with trails leading throughout them. So looking at kind of more in detail of those specific land uses, so there's 3 base zoning districts within the PDD. There's the general business district, and it may be easier to look at the map while I'm talking about this. So there's the 3 base zoning districts: general business, which would be for this commercial corner right here, single-family residential R1, which would cover all of the single-family lots outside of these garden homes. So all of the SF50, SF60, and SF70 lot codes. And then obviously the garden home zoning district would cover these garden lot codes up here. And I've included a snippet here of the dimensional requirements from the actual PDD itself, so you can see what I was talking about. They have these, 5 lot codes. SF55, 60, and 70 would all fall under the R1 zoning district with these modifications to be the different lot sizes. The garden home, same thing, would fall under the garden home zoning district, and then the commercial would fall under the general business. A couple of keynotes: the median lot size, given all these numbers, would be 60 by 118, which would be just over 7,000 total square feet per the median lot size. And those calculations do not include the around 50 garden homes, which are sized at 50 by 100. And then also of note, there are height restrictions for the single-family residential lots that abut the arterial class roadways, of which there are 3 on the site. We'll go back to the map for you. Rafe Burnett, the secondary arterial, Lower Seguin Road, a secondary arterial, and the extension of 3009, which would be that principal arterial. So 75% of those lots along those arterial roadways would have to be single story. Just a couple of notes on that. Looking at the next portion of the development standards, it goes into UDC Article 7 regarding sign regulations. Saddlebrook is proposing to make modifications to the subdivision entry signs and then also the development signs. And then we'll go into each one of these briefly in detail about what's current and what they're proposing. So again, just to refresh, this is what a kind of a subdivision entry sign is. It's the larger kind of sign with the neighborhood or the subdivision development title along the frontage. And these are both primary subdivision entry signs for reference when we talk about the specific requirements. So for the maximum area of the subdivision entry signs, the current regulation is 32 square feet per sign face. They are proposing 187 square feet per sign face. And then for the maximum number of signs, so currently there's 1 primary sign you can have at your primary entrance. And then at every other entrance, you can have a secondary sign, which is 75% of that area. For the proposed Saddlebrook development standards, they have 2 primary signs, which would be on both sides of that primary entrance in the conceptual plan. So like right here off of 3009, they would have 1 primary sign on each side, which would be that max of 187 square feet. And then at each secondary entrance, so each other entrance into the subdivision, they'd have 1 at 75% of the area, which would be the same regulation as now. For development signs, it's a few more requirements, and it's actually split into a couple of different categories within the subdivision. That they've got wayfinding signs and model ID signs. So the wayfinding signs would be signs you see throughout the subdivision that kind of earmark, directional paths for vehicles. They would show you where, like which direction the parks were, or which direction the trailhead was, or even various model homes. And then the model ID signs are simply outside of the model homes, the various ones they'd have throughout the subdivision, detailing the builder's name and the details of the actual home. So for maximum area, it's remaining the same. They just wanted to outline for each of those subsets, it's 32 square feet for sign face. The maximum height is currently 6 feet for development signs. For the wayfinding, Saddlebrook is proposing an increase to 8 and remaining at 6 for the model ID signs. For residential on number of signs, there's 1 per entry, not to exceed 2 total. So the Saddlebrook is proposing for the wayfinding signs, to have 1 sign per number of recorded units. And so for reference on that one, they're going through the master plan process now. Obviously, it hasn't been finalized and approved, but there'd be maybe around 10 or just under 10 total units for reference. And then the model ID signs, it'd be 1 sign in front of each of the homes, detailing each home. And then the duration of each of the signs. So for residential development, currently, the development signs are installed after final plat approval and then either removed after 3 years or 75% build out, whichever is less. And they're proposing that for the wayfinding signs, they be installed following the recordation of the final plat of each unit. And then since they're wayfinding signs, they would just remain throughout the subdivision. And then the model ID signs would be installed following the recordation of the final plat and then removed whenever that model home is sold and then closed. I'm looking at kind of the last change here, significant change to the development standards. They have one minor change to the street improvement standards within 2114-1. So these are just the various classifications that, that are in our master thoroughfare plan or are in our street improvement standards that are in their subdivision. With the one change, so these remain the same with our current standards. The one change they have is under this paved alley section. The right-of-way is increasing from 20 feet to 30 feet, and then the pavement section is increasing from 20 feet to 24 feet. And this would be mainly applicable for that garden home section where they'd have the alleys required. So looking at the Schertz, the southern Schertz sector plan, so this is kind of as of a zoomed in view for you. The property, again, indicated with a star, but you can better see it with the yellow color. So this is the sector plan with the 2020 owner requested amendments that were done last year. You can see Saddlebrook, which is the subject of this zone change, and then also the fluid tracts down here, just for reference. And so with that yellow color, see if you can see that legend, it's single family residential with that change. That was approved by council June 23rd, 2020. And so single family residential, that land use designation is intended to have that traditional neighborhood design that utilizes a mix of single family residential uses, so i.e. like lot sizes or anything like that, or like garden homes versus traditional detached, as well as some limited commercial development that would support the daily activities of development. And if I can call your attention back to the conceptual plan, you can see that the main elements of what they're intending under the comp plan with that mix of residential uses and that commercial development are included. And so the Saddlebrook PDD, the proposed zone change, is compatible with that comp plan designation now on the subject property. So with that being said, staff is recommending approval of the proposed zone change to PDD. Once again, the first reason for comp plan conformance with that variety of single family residential options, limited commercial development, but also the private trail system that connects the various open space and drainage corridors with the private parks throughout the subdivision, also included in the comp plan. The minimal impact on the existing and potential adjacent uses, like we talked about in the first couple of slides with the ag or undeveloped lands, and again with the single family residential to the west with Ryan Valley, again another PDD. And also that the PDD is consistent with City Council's vision for residential development in southern Schertz. So based on kind of recent meetings, and we were talking about the comprehensive land use plan, Council wanted to allow the property owners and developers the flexibility to implement a greater range of lot sizes into the single family development and neighborhood designs that would possibly also include more affordable housing options to the residents. And also, City Council has indicated their preference to kind of reduce the amount of oversight typically seen on the neighborhood design elements that you see with some of the other PDDs, which would allow property owners to more efficiently adapt their developments to any sort of evolving market conditions, for instance, like you're seeing in southern Schertz. So staff agrees with City Council that property owners in southern Schertz should have a significant influence on the future development goals for that area. And so staff is recommending approval of the zone change as submitted. The property owner, or the developer and the engineer are here if you have any specific questions for them as well. Thank you.
All right. Excuse me. All right. Thank you, sir. Would the developer like to make any comments or presentation at this time? You're not required to. It's your choice if you've got anything you'd like to tell us. Okay. Well, at this time, then, I'll open the public hearing for input from the public. Anyone wishing to address this issue in front of the commission can step forward to the dais or to the lectern there. Anyone? No takers. We're sure. Nobody wants to, okay. One more time? No? All right, we'll close public comment. Commissioners.
Here, I'll go to the full.
It is now. The commercial parcel is this pink piece down on the far end,
Yes, sir.
and it borders Schaefer and 1518.
So Lower Seguin Road.
I'm sorry, Lower Seguin
Oh,
Road.
you're fine. Lower Seguin Road, and this would actually be the extension of, sorry, the extension of FM 3009 is what that is on the master thoroughfare plan.
That's not 1518.
No. No, so 1518 is on the other side of Ryan Valley going west. This would be 3009. So I don't know if this map shows, so 1518 is over here. Where's my
All
map?
right, let me put your arrow back. That's 1518.
Yes. And then this is the development over here.
Okay? My question goes back to this parcel. It's basically 100 by 100.
What?
Its size is 100 feet by 100 feet.
The commercial tract?
Yeah.
No, it's 3.5 acres.
Well, on one of them, you were showing that the commercial was 100 by 100.
So that would be the minimum lot size, if that's what you're referencing here?
Commercial.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
this would be the minimum lot size. So this is pretty typical of general business district like we currently have. It's just the minimum, like if you were going to subdivide commercial tracts into 2 different lots, they would each at least have to be 100 by 100. So this isn't, they're not planning just for one commercial lot within this identified tract.
Okay, so the chart that you're showing me there with the dimensions on it are not the dimensions of the proposed changes?
So the chart I'm showing you is the dimensional standards for each of the zoning districts within the PDD. So for instance,
Right, and if they are going to make an adjustment to one of these, we should see another line that says that their single-family 55 is going to be 6,900 square feet. It's going to be so wide and so long and so forth. This doesn't tell me what they're putting on the ground.
so this would, this would show you, this specific table would show you how each of the areas, either zoned for single-family residential development, like these 3, or these 4, with 1 being garden homes, or the commercial development, how those would have to be subdivided in order to be developed. And so they're not indicative of the overall area of each of the land uses. So I could show you on the, sorry, let me go back to that map. So obviously, there's like 217 total acres being, or 229 acres in this zone change. So there's probably around 200 acres of actual single-family residential development. So that's the overall size of it. But each of these individual lots that you're seeing has to conform with the dimensional standards set here. So it's very similar to how development would currently work. For instance, R1, I believe, is 80 by 120. And so if you had a 10-acre tract, you would have to have a minimum of 80 width by 120 depth for each lot within that single-family tract. This is just the lot sizes, not the overall use area, if that makes sense.
Okay, so we're taking and lifting the dimensional chart requirements that are in the UDC, adopting it into the PDD.
Yes, so that with these modifications, though, so like these aren't the same as they would be within our current UDC. So, for instance, there is no SF55 in our UDC. So the base zoning of this lot code is R1 with these modifications, which basically just changes the overall lot size and specific setbacks.
That's what I wanted to hear. All right.
Okay. Yes,
I had a question, Nick. Good evening. Long night last night.
not too bad.
Hey, I was wondering about that same corner there. Zone for general business, showing a commercial medical office. Is that going to be changed, or is that not etched in stone, or?
That's just on the conceptual plan. So we're not kind of outlining what use has to go there. It's just GB.
Okay, so, but we can build up 120 feet from above ground on
Sure.
that corner
Yeah,
and put in whatever they want to put in it on the 3.4.
right. As long as the land uses conform with the general business zoning district as amended, that exists in our code.
Okay, so they can put a gas station in with special permit.
With a specific use permit, yes, but not by right.
I guess this would be addressed to the developer. How long do you, ballpark time do you think it'll be to build out there? Because I don't think 3009's in yet, is it?
So the current projections as far as build-out are right around 5 years, except for maybe the commercial that may delay because it typically will trail behind the residential development by maybe an additional up to 5 years or so.
So, will the garden homes go in first, do you know?
The way that the phasing is currently lined out with the proposed builders that we have is the development would actually start along Lower Seguin Road and start building 3009 coming off of that intersection and working back toward the top end. So the current phasing that's shown on the master plan that we're working with staff with is the garden homes would be in phase 9 or so, but that doesn't mean that it would necessarily sequentially work that way,
Okay.
depending on the timing of the roadway connections.
Yeah, that was just a question I had. And also with the park, it's going to be a private park, correct?
Those are private parks, privately maintained by the HOA, correct?
Okay, and then I guess you'll submit some documentation prior to the preliminary plat that actually states that and what you're going to put in there and all that stuff.
That's correct. The master development plan that will come before you subsequent to this will also identify it as a private park.
Okay, well, thank you, sir.
Absolutely.
Where are the sewers going to hook up at? To what?
Not sure how to use the pointer here, but okay. So the proposed sanitary sewer solution is right in this corner of the commercial tract near the frontage of Lower Seguin Road. Everything on the property drains across and toward Lower Seguin Road. This would be the corner where a lift station, sanitary sewer lift station, is going to be constructed. That lift station will then pump with a force main up the alignment of 3009 and back to the treatment plant that's currently treating the sewer from the Rhine Valley lift station. The Rhine Valley lift station would come offline, which is over here. So that lift station that's in Rhine Valley would come offline. We'll construct, with this project, a gravity sewer line that's going to come over to this lift station. This lift station will then take the place of that lift station and serve the new development.
Will you, the developer, be paying for all that, or is that a cost share with the city at all?
So the developer will front the cost on all of that. There is an agreement that is being drafted right now that has been already agreed to in verbally agreed to. It's in the process of being put into writing. It essentially is putting the construction of it on the developer. He has to, with that lift station, provide for the capacity already committed on the Rhine Valley lift station. So there's an agreement on the Rhine Valley lift station that commits capacity to the school district and the subdivision, and that capacity has to be conveyed to this lift station. So what they've already got in reservation in that lift station in Rhine Valley has to transfer to the new lift station. In addition to that, the Saddlebrook development has to treat its and allow for its sewer, and then after all of those things are done, then the developer gets reimbursed at a set fee that is not a city reimbursement. It's more of a connection fee to other developers as they are bringing sewer to this same lift station. They would have what's currently being talked about as a $750 connection fee that's above the city's impact fee for connection to that system, until such time that the developer is reimbursed for the construction cost of the lift station, but not the force main portion of that. All right, it's a little complicated, but not too complicated.
Do you have a cost estimate yet for that?
We do. Yes.
Do you care to share?
The lift station portion of it is around $840,000. The force main total of the lift station is closer to about 1.2 million. And so the $840,000 is what would be eligible as a connection fee after all of the other requirements are picked up.
So how, you said future connections. What are you anticipating would be a future connection to this?
So they would come in either one of a couple of different fashions. Right now, you have gravity sanitary sewer that feeds to the Ryan Valley lift station that actually runs through property that does not have capacity. In other words, the main is there, but there's no capacity in that system to treat the sewer, so they cannot tie in. This would add capacity to those, so as those tie in, for example, that would be able to be handled by the new lift station. There would be a connection fee for that. There's the project we just talked about that's across the street, which is the fluid tract. That is proposing to bring a gravity line that would come and tie into this same lift station. They would have a connection fee on top of the city's impact fee. And there's a possibility that, let's say somebody close to the area wanted to do a development that you would approve, and then they could put in a lift station. There would be a smaller lift station that would pump back to this lift station that could then take it all the way to the treatment plant. So it could serve as a regional solution reasonably to add capacity for other developments in the area.
Once this lift station is in place, does its maintenance gets turned over to the city?
That's correct.
Nick? Somewhere in the lower Seguin area, I'm not sure where, is the boundary between where sewer goes, where wastewater goes to OJR and wastewater goes to the south plant. So whatever he's talking about, future connections in that general area, the line of separation for impact fees and direction of flow is right in there. I don't know the exact, but I think y'all need to figure that out. One, so he doesn't overbuild, and two, so he doesn't anticipate flow that may not ever come to him.
Yeah, and to be clear, I think they've looked at that. So again, to get this to the south plant, it doesn't come up the Womanhorn Creek line. It would have to come up the other line, which is significantly far off. So yeah, I think the applicant is assuming, based on their development time frame, when the city would likely get around. And we had that comment the other day to the other. They're kind of planning for that. To Mr. Evans' comment, they're going to take off the Corbett lift station. So to some degree, this is a bigger one, but we're still maintaining one lift station. We wouldn't have two lift stations. So from the city's perspective, 6 1/2 does the other. If this one can serve a larger area till that gets up here, it's probably benefit.
Oh, it's a good idea to take that old lift station off the service. That's a great idea. I'm just wondering if he can get a lift station for $800,000 to serve all that area.
Yeah, that's certainly his deal. And again, it would not surprise me that unless the economy tanks, we'll probably be up here 5, 6, 7, 8 years going, yep, we're out of capacity in the lift station because of development, and when are we getting the other line?
And normally, in some previous lift stations that we've done for like Homestead and some other areas, it's a certain little footprint. Would this be expandable in the future if something were to come up and the lift station needed to be expanded? Is there going to be a big enough footprint?
We haven't gotten to that point yet.
Okay.
Certainly, typically the applicant's issue is a cost thing, but if they say, yeah, 6 1/2 does the other, I can design it, you can add on to it, so be it. Sometimes it becomes problematic because you've got this huge upfront cost to do some things.
Yeah, and the lift stations I've seen that the city has, there's really no room to expand. So think about that while you guys are planning all this. I've got something else, different subject. Can you go over again, unless you haven't done so already, what roads are going to be built on this? Are we going to expect a full-size 3009 and the, what's the other one? The Raft Burnett, an extension possibly of Corbett? Is Raft Burnett going to be built to connect to Schaefer? Can you just go through the ingress and egress out of this neighborhood?
So yeah, there's, obviously there'll be dedication for 3009, and that'll get built out as development comes. And for Lower Seguin, there's, I believe, do you know the distance of the right-of-way? How much right-of-way? Lower Seguin? Yeah, there's a 15.
Can you go back to that one?
You want to go back to that one? Sorry. That one had the master thoroughfare plan on it. This is, you're right, play better.
What can we expect to be built out on this?
So as it develops, this section of 3009 and Lower Seguin would obviously be dedicated and improved. The full improvements for all of the master thoroughfare plan roadways on the site, so 3009, Lower Seguin, Ref Burnett, up here, which are all arterial roadways, some principal, some secondary, are still being kind of fine-tuned. The full extent of the improvements has yet to be actually finalized with the TIA study that they're currently doing with the master development plan. But the full section up to this point of 3009 would be built out as they kind of go through the units, which are scheduled to start like down closer on the south and then move up, and they would construct 3009 as needed for the circulation of their development, obviously, since it doesn't really connect here.
So our two access points are going to be the new 3009 hitting Lower Seguin and that other little exit?
Here? Here?
Oh, is that one going to be built?
Yeah, as they build out these two units, they'll have to construct, or they'll have to connect here to be able to have 2 points of access for.
Okay,
for
so
development there.
up and until that happens 4 years from now, what's going to happen before that? Where's my entry exit going to be?
You have both on Lower Seguin here, and then you'll have entrances connected through Ryan Valley, which would go to existing streets on the other side that would provide other sort of entrances as well before they even get up to this point up here where they'd have to connect through Ref Burnett.
It's a little difficult to see, but there's a, I guess to the east of, it's not really going to be 3009. It'll probably be a local, we'll give it a name of some kind. But that's another street entrance off of Lower Seguin, correct? It's not real obvious.
Where are you saying?
That brown, now go east on.
No, east on Lower Seguin.
Right there.
This ingress egress easement? Are you talking about?
Yeah, what's that for if that's not a street? Oh, okay. So I think getting to Commissioner Broad's question, up until build out, when they finally connect to Raft Burnett, the two access points would be Lower Seguin and through Rhine Valley, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Is that what you're looking for?
Yes.
Yeah.
And who do we expect to build Raft Burnett?
So depending on the improvements, the developer would obviously be constructing whatever improvements they would need to service these units off of Ref Burnett. Sorry again.
Where it connects to Schaefer Road?
So per the subdivision ordinance, they would have to improve half of Rafe Burnett adjacent to the subdivision.
Okay.
They would have to improve half of Lower Seguin Road adjacent to the subdivision as they plat. They'd improve 3009, the full width here, and then an obligation for half of it here. As Nick said, we reviewed a TIA. Per the TIA, there are some intersection improvements off the map, sort of right turn lanes at 1518 to help traffic flow. When we looked at the initial TIA with those improvements, the road construction, it is roughly proportional. You're building a bit in excess, but not so that it's disproportionate. So as Nick said, we've been having conversations with the applicant about a subdivision improvement agreement that looks at the timing of their development, what improvements make sense, and when those improvements make sense. But I think to Chairperson Outlaw, the bulk of the development is gonna be coming in from Lower Seguin Road to 1518 for first years, really until they get up into this phase, at which point they have that connection to Rafe Burnett. So yeah, that's the bulk of it. So as we deal normally, when this stuff starts developing a bunch, we're gonna have issues with the Lower Seguin Road near 1518 not being improved, other half of the road, which is why we're waiting on the development south of here to come in and do some improvements. But again, that's sort of the issue. I will say is, based on their road construction, it is, you know, this is not one where we're going, oh, they don't have to build because of road proportionality issues. So again, we're gonna sit down and kind of try to come up with what makes sense. But inherently, this is the problem we have with development. It's not kind of consecutive. You kind of get a little bit of leap, and we get gaps in roads, one side of the road, not the other. But again, the positive, as you know, is we've started collecting roadway impact fees, and we have that pot of money to use. With the annexation, we've had conversations about that, expanding the roadway impact fee service area to be able to use the monies collected elsewhere in these areas.
So we just made improvements to Lower Seguin Road. There's going to need to be more improvements?
There will need to be more improvements to the road.
Okay. And go back on the northern side. You said on the Burnett, they're going to be responsible for just that piece.
Responsible per the subdivision, or a standard kind of thing when we start this out, they have half of Rafe Burnett adjacent to the project. The TIA says I think you've got some intersection improvements there. You're right, when this stuff develops up here, and we have people dumping out onto Rafe Burnett, they're gonna be up at P&Z, and they're gonna be up at City Council saying, we've got a problem, when is the city, lost the cursor, gonna get in here and make these improvements to Rafe Burnett further down to handle the traffic? And we need to start planning for that. Those are comments you've told us, and I mean this sincerely. P&Z has said, look, we need to start looking at this development we have, and we need to get that on the CIP. And so now we've got the two CIPs, the improvement one and then the repair one, that we try to map that out. So once engineering knows this is going, they're going to make adjustments to that CIP, and I can tell you these roads are going to be a higher priority. But likely, we will all be up here for a long period of time lamenting we have not improved the roads. I'm not going to say that, because inherently in our situation, like other communities, that infrastructure just lags. But again, you get the rooftops, some of that pain, you start getting the commercial, property tax, you get sales tax, and eventually you catch up. But again, as Commissioner Greenwald knows, this is just what we will suffer through despite how well we plan, because the inherent limitations of you got to have those people here start paying taxes. We got to accumulate those taxes over a period of time, and then we eventually get enough money, TxDOT assistance, to make the improvements kind of going.
I drive down there about once a week, but I can't for the life of me remember what is Rafe Burnett now? Is it asphalt or dirt, or what is it now?
Kind of asphalt. Yeah, it's sort of. I mean, you can drive down it.
Yeah, I've,
Hard. I'm better ask that question. You got a pickup truck, you can get down it.
All right.
yeah, I haven't been down there in a long time either.
I
It,
will say this, there's some issues we're dealing with, because Rafe Burnett is not a city street.
Yes, no, it's not.
Road.
It's not.
There are issues with that cause dedication and become public, so that's an extra challenge with Rafe Burnett. So again, it's probably a positive that the bulk of the traffic is coming out on Lower Seguin for 3-4 years of this thing.
yeah, I think you could compare it to, and there went the street name. Boy, that happens way too often these days. Up north, where we had the, Eckert, there you go, thank you. And it turned out it was the developer's advantage to make improvements to that street. And, you know, it may turn out, or we may get development in that area right to the west of him, and maybe between the two of them, so.
And I will say, as far as the subdivision improvement, you know, we've discussed this section in particular. It's, you know, if the school's not developing anytime soon, you know, and you can argue this section as well, but clearly this section, does it make sense for them to make that improvement, or does it make sense for them to put those dollars to another section that people are going to use and drive on. So we're going to work through those, trying to find a win-win, because again, roads aren't great, access is bad, they're going to have trouble selling houses, which means the lot value goes down. You know, you try to find some common ground on this stuff, and that's what we've been talking about.
Do we know what the school's going to do there?
No, so the school district eventually has it. They'll tell you, we don't know quite what kind of school it is, don't know when. This is not one on the near-term radar. You know, one of the things that's been interesting with the pandemic is school district is about, check their website, don't quote me on this, but they're about 70% of kids back in school. The rest are learning from home. The other thing is they are no longer a fast-growing district. Their growth in attendance is not kind of maintained at the level with Schertz and Cibolo, and that's probably for a few reasons. Pandemic, people trying to do virtual things, it's charter schools kind of coming in, and so they've been, you know, sit on the Capital or Community Advisory Committee for the school district, and they're kind of revisiting their plans. They don't need to build these schools as quickly as they thought they are. So there's no immediate plan for that. But again, that may change 2 years from now, may change 3 years from now. We'll kind of regroup. But yeah, I can guarantee we will have people complaining about roads in and out of here.
I've got some more. Thank you, Brian. On the commercial property, did you guys entertain anything other than GB, or was it just GB? Did we entertain neighborhood services at all?
Without kind of a concrete plan for what they were proposing, we felt it would be kind of the best for a principal for 2 arterial roadways. GB would offer the most wide variety of uses we thought would be best fit there, especially with the natural buffer that they're going to have with the drainage.
Yeah, I think the positive part is the natural buffer there. It shouldn't be too bad.
Even if they were directly adjacent, they'd have screening and buffering too.
I'm a little concerned on the northern end, where all the small lots and the garden homes are going to be. Mm-hmm. The density in that area, that's going to be a tremendous density. You guys okay with that? That's 130 some odd units up there with one way in, one way out, mailboxes on the corner. Can you imagine what it's going to be like with 50-foot lots on that street, trying to get to that mailbox and trying to get in and out of there, and the town, the garden homes and everything else? It's going to be a mess. It's going to be a hornet's nest in that little general neighborhood.
I don't know if you want to address it, but.
I wouldn't want to live on that street. No way.
Well, I can appreciate that comment, and so we did work through that. And that's kind of what led to, for example, in the garden homes, the drives that are on the rear of those houses, and that's what the code requires. We expanded the right-of-way of those alleys. We expanded the pavement widths in those alleys just to try to mitigate what we know has historically been an issue on some of garden home rear alley widths. So that's been addressed internally. On the 55-foot lots that are in that area, what we did with that is, instead of being a 55 by 120, we've increased the depth of those lots to 125 feet. That allows us to push the house back so that we get, the tendency is that the cars don't fit on the driveways, and so that 5 extra feet lets us get that vehicle off the street, out of the sidewalk conflict. And so that was a modification that was made there. Where the mailboxes were set, there will be cluster boxes. So up near the park area that you can see toward the north end, they've actually been inset there so that you can collect your mail. It'll be an offset from the roadway. So you can park, pull in off roadway, and then to where it's inset and get your mail there before heading home. So those are a few of the things that we've done to kind of address some of those concerns.
I appreciate that, but it's going to be ugly. I'll tell you that. It's going to be ugly. I've heard these plans before in other neighborhoods like Rhine Valley and other areas, and it just turns into a hornet's nest. It's going to be ugly. But that's okay.
And one more question, if I
I'm not living there.
on this 3009, that's not really going to be 3009. Is that in the future perhaps going to be tied into the 3009 coming off of 78?
That's the plan for the master thoroughfare plan. It would connect up the existing 3009. Obviously, there's a great deal to work out with that in the
I
future.
understand. Now, is that a TxDOT? Is that a TxDOT item, or is that a City of Schertz item?
So the current roadway is obviously a TxDOT maintained roadway, but it'd be a joint effort getting this existing roadway connected to that one.
Okay, so when they're building sections out here in the development, who's going to be in charge of that?
This would be a city roadway.
Okay, so who's going to be paying for that? Are they going to? I'm confused
About what?
about it's. We have FM 3009.
Right.
That's TxDOT. We have FM 1518. That's
Right.
TxDOT. And now we're going to have this section of 3009 that's eventually going to be tied in to FM 3009 that's TxDOT. But the City of Schertz is going to build it.
Yeah, so until it's connected, it would be a city roadway maintained by the city, obviously constructed, as Brian was talking about. The improvements would be, put in by the developer, but it would be a city roadway
Yes,
until that's eventually connected,
We refer to this as 3009, but what we're actually, the 3009 ends at FM 78. What we're looking at is the master thoroughfare plan that projects the extension of FM 3009, okay? Well, unless TxDOT comes in and makes it a TxDOT project and puts in that road, it's going to happen this way, where bit by bit, the city and the developers build the roadway, and eventually either TxDOT finishes it or we get enough of it built that we convince TxDOT to connect to it, okay? Now, if I'm wrong, once we reach a certain population, they're going to hand us the FM roads anyway, correct? Brian, doesn't that happen? No? Oh, okay, signal maintenance, all right, okay.
I think Nick did a good job with it. So the FM designation that TxDOT maintains, it stops at 78 for what we call 3009. When this gets built, even if it connects, if nothing changes fundamentally or, technically changes, from 78 south is a city road. We'll give it another, we'll call it, Mile Way or something like that.
Brian James Highway.
But yeah, it could be Brian James Memorial Parkway. But,
Memorial.
well, you never know. These things go. This job is tough. But like I said, we've been in conversations with TxDOT about that, the design of the intersection of 78 and 3009. We've had conversations to say, hey, because we have this on the thoroughfare plan to extend, does it make sense to make it designated an FM roadway all the way down as well? It's got pros and cons to it. TxDOT would maintain it, but now we got to go through TxDOT for approvals and drive approaches and curb cuts and things like that. So unless TxDOT says we're going to get approval and change the state road system to designate this as a state road, it's a city road. Though we keep calling it FM 3009, which is where the confusion comes.
Okay,
Nick Copier way.
There we go. Yeah, that would be an easy.
sometimes I got to shake my head, my eyes are stuck.
No, yeah, you're fine. Right now, it's technically named on our master thoroughfare plan. I think it's a principal arterial, and it's called a north-south collector. It just lines up with 3009. Sorry for the confusion. That's okay.
Mr. Odom, you have anything? No? Mr. Platt? Okay. Looking at the UDC, Article 5, I guess this is anyway, because I only kept a couple of pages here. But under the UDC, or where it talks about Plan Development District, it says criteria for approval. And item number 5, the extent to which the PDD will result in a superior development that could be achieved through conventional zoning. I stumbled across something earlier and I can't find it again, but basically, I ask this question all the time. What's in it for the city? And we'll go through this. I've got a bunch of notes and questions, but the bottom line is what's in it for the city? By giving away these lot sizes and all that, what are we in turn getting?
I think I can let the developer kind of speak to
Well,
main benefits of what they're doing, but
let me
I guess
pose
from
it
our
at-
perspective- Sorry, go ahead.
Let me pose it a different way. Staff is recommending approval.
Right.
Why?
So
What do you see in this PDD that you think it should be approved?
I think, first and foremost, obviously for every zone change, we look at the comprehensive plan and whether there's conformance there. And given the amendment, I know a PDD is different. It goes kind of different above and beyond. But from the base level, that's where we'll start, whether the comprehensive plan is in line with what they're proposing. And it's almost to a T exactly what the single-family res designation calls for. I think the key for this one is it's kind of, given the recent, back and forth in conversations we've had with council for increased flexibility and allowances for owners to develop without such, stringent neighborhood design elements that we would control to a T with a variety of lot sizes that, we may not have our finger on the pulse of the housing market for what would sell, what's not only good for people moving in, but what's financially viable. And so I think the process that we got to this layout and this development is the process that, looking forward, council wants to see from these kind of neighborhood designs, which is the flexibility, which is the allowances and less kind of strict oversight. Obviously, they'll see this after your recommendation, so they can, correct if they see it a different way. But from our perspective, from the last 6 months or so through these conversations, that's where we think the advantage of this one comes.
Okay, well, I did have a comment on, and again, it's in here somewhere. I think it's under your staff. Yeah, following conversations at city council meetings with the mayor and council regarding the vision for residential development in southern Schertz, and it goes on and it's on. And I'm not doubting that took place. But city council has told me and the rest of these commissioners sitting up here, they've passed none of that on to us. They've expressed nothing to us in defining their desires for development in southern Schertz.
Sure.
Okay? That's a communication problem. And while I don't want to argue, or I'll take your word for the fact that they want to give, and they say property owners, why don't we just say developers, more flexibility. I'm not necessarily against that, but there's flexibility and then there's carte blanche.
Sure.
Okay? So, Brian, why don't you hold on just a minute? Let me go through these things and okay. I started with your memo. So the median lot size is 60 by 118, and being having had my fair share of statistics, I ran the numbers, and that's true. The median lot size would be an what is it, SF 60?
Yes, sir.
But back on his table where he lists, where is it? It's on page 10, I think. It's the conceptual. It's the one after the page you're on. It's the next one. No,
Slider in the packet.
it was the one that, and unfortunately I couldn't print. My printer wouldn't print those.
You're fine. I have the full staff report printed here, and I can put on the dot cam if you'd like, depending on
No, it was anyway.
this one.
Yes, that one. I think it's that one.
Yeah. So this is the current iteration of kind of the master plan they've been.
Well,
going through.
I just want to point out, and I need somebody. And fortunately you didn't quote it, so it's okay. But somewhere, yeah, if you can flip it, rotate it. Yeah, just rotate it so the table's at the top. There you go. And if you can zoom in at the bottom of that second table there. All right.
You're talking about right here. I can
Yeah.
see what you're talking about.
Well, it says the mean lot size is 70 by, what is that, 118? In other words, it's trying to tell me the average lot size in this development
Correct.
is an SF 70,
Right.
No.
Right, that's a comment on the current master plan. That's not the actual
Well,
number.
I mean, I'm not even sure, then, you know, that's an error on what looks to me, I don't know, is this a master plan? Is this a plat in progress? What is this drawing?
This is, so basically the current iteration of the master plan we're going through, that's not yet finalized.
Okay.
That was deemed for this purpose conceptual. So I went through the calculations like you had talked about. It comes out, and I don't have the Excel sheet I did in front of me, just over 7,000 feet. So right around 60 by 118 is actually the mean as well.
Okay.
But that's yet to be.
Okay. Where we talk about the proposed sign regulations. Okay, where we talk about the proposed sign regulations. Current UDC is 32 square feet per sign. They want 187. And you put a picture up there of what we typically see are not signs, they're walls. And then there'll be a sign. So when you apply the 32 square feet, are you applying it to the entire wall or just to that?
It would just be to the letters of that sign. I think they specifically mentioned that they wanted, I think, letters and or symbols on the signs, which is why they had an increase.
I mean, 187 square feet's a pretty specific number, you know, and it's almost 6 times the size of what we allow now. That, you know, and that one doesn't bother me so much because, you know, I assume they've got the space, and, you know, again, developers like to make things look nice. But when you drop down to the next one where you get a secondary sign, the secondary sign gets to be 75% of that 187 square feet. So now we're 140 square feet on a secondary sign. Okay? You answered my question about wayfinding signs. One of my favorite sayings is the devil is in the details. Okay, so when it says 1 sign per number of recorded units, the first thing popped in my mind is, what's a unit? Well, you're talking about unit 1, unit 2, unit 3. I got that. The one big plus I did see for the city was their increasing the alley width, the pavements in the alleys. But, you know, so that got a green check mark. Okay. I already was on my soapbox about city council because, you know, I get it. I think I'm going to regret saying this, but let me say it because it's been bugging me for months. Every memo of this type, you guys go back and you tell us how it compares to the comprehensive land use plan, and quite honestly, I don't care anymore. It's become obvious to me that it's not worth anything anymore. If you don't like it, council will change it for you. So, and you made the comment that this PDD is in compliance with the, sure it is, because we changed the comp plan, okay? As far as I'm concerned, it's not in accordance with the comp plan, but again, I come back to, well, let me keep going here. These guys don't want to listen to me. You address the general business versus neighborhood services, and I get that. Thank you. I wanted to ask you again, devil's in the details. Page 3 of their PDD says the front yard setback shall be measured from the property line to the front face of the main or primary building. What I'm asking here is, my house is L-shaped, okay? You got the front of the house and then the garage pokes out a little bit. So what's considered the face of the building? The front room windows or the garage doors? See? The devil's in the details. Here's my big, well, my big concern with this development, again, and there's flexibility, and then there's something else. You answered my question about the roadways. They're all city standard except the alleyways. Thank you. But I get back to page 10, where that's where he lays out SF 55, 60, 70. And when you take out the garden homes, that leaves 587 building lots. 36% of those, 213 of that 587, are SF 55, okay? And back in, we've got, and I'm sorry, I thought I was going to be a little bit more organized tonight. Where'd I put it? I've got it here somewhere. Probably messed up all my notes here. Bear with me just a second. Here we go. Ordinance 10-S-29 that was approved the 28th day of September 2010. It basically said no more R6, no more R7. That's what council said 10 years ago. Things change, all right? But here's where I'm going. SF 55, 213 lots, 36% of the development is smaller than R7. SF 60, you've got 264 lots, that's 45%, that's almost half the development is smaller than R6, okay? So now you're looking at 91%, again, excluding the garden homes, you're looking at 91% of this development is smaller than R6, okay? I have a problem with that. I think we've gone too far. We've allowed in other PDDs, we've allowed small lots, but they've been the minority of the development, not the majority. And you know, when you throw the garden homes in there, so the percentages drop a little bit. SF 55 becomes 33%, and SF 60 becomes 42%. But not counting the, you know, without the garden homes, only less than 20% of this development is SF 70, and SF 70 doesn't even, is smaller than R3. Okay? As you look at the dimensional residential zoning district, R1 is 80 by 120, R2 is 70 by 120, and R3 is 75 by 120. And then you jump down because R4 is apartments. And then you jump down to R6 and R7. So, again, and we've used the argument before that we've allowed developers some flexibility in lot sizes in order to get a better development than we would if we just went with straight zoning. I don't see that here. What I see is, you know, we could zone this R3 and he couldn't build anything less than a 9,000 square foot lot. And here in his PDD, the biggest one he's going to build is 8260, and that's only 20%. Okay, let me see where else we're going here. I wanted to ask, here's a comment I just added. You go back to the conceptual plan, I would hope that, no, you don't need to put it back up there, Nick. This is just a verbal comment. Okay, well, you got to back up there. So those intersections where the entrances on at least the two four-way intersections on the 3009, I would hope that when they're designing those intersections, they consider the future need for traffic signals, okay? So that we don't get into the problem we had up here at Woodland Oaks and Schertz Parkway, where nobody thought ahead, and when we had to widen the road, now the monument sign's in the way. So just a comment that you might, when you get around to actually doing the road design, you might want to consider leaving or making sure that you're okay with traffic signals in the future. And then I wanted to talk a little bit Because we keep throwing the term affordable housing around. Does anybody have a definition of affordable housing? I can tell you what HUD says. HUD says affordable housing is where you don't spend more than 30% of your gross income on housing costs. And that's mortgage, interest, property taxes, and insurance. So I did a little figuring, a little calculate. I love to calculate. Drives my financial advisor crazy. I found a mortgage calculator, and the current rate was 2.86% for 30 years. Okay. So a $200,000 home, or you have to borrow $200,000 because I didn't mess around with down payments. That monthly payment would be $1,300, which would require an annual income of $52,000. Yeah, I think that's. And trying to find the median income in Bexar County, it depends on where you look. In one place, the Census Bureau says it's $27,976, and someplace else they say it's 50-something, okay? So I just have, you know, when I'll just be very honest with you. What I see here, and the developer had some very good words. Where's his words? Where he talks about, well, now I've got things all messed up. Well, he talks about, all right. I'll find it here eventually. I keep shuffling papers and burying everything. Okay, so where am I? What I'm looking for? It says the purpose of the PDD regulations is to encourage and promote more creative, innovative, and imaginative land development that would not be possible under the regulations found in a typical zoning district. I don't see a whole lot of creative, innovative, and imaginative land development in this PDD. The intent is to allow substantial flexibility in planning, design, and development standards in exchange for greater land values and amenities such as enhanced parkland, open space, preservation of natural resources, pedestrian-friendly environment, and deviation from typical traffic patterns. What I see is a, you know, I'll mention it by name, Crossvine brought some innovative subdivision design to the city of Schertz. What I see here is just an ordinary plain old, let's see how many houses we can cram onto these faces, and, you know, so the words are nice, but I don't see it in the concept. I think that's all I had to say, gentlemen, and you know, for your consideration. Again, I get the whole idea of people, you know, everyone's not interested, and I've said it before, I think more people deserve the opportunity to live in Schertz. They really do. And you know, what drives the price of houses up is what the developer has to pay for the land, how many lots he can get out of that particular acreage, and you know, our UDC drove a lot of that. It says you got to have 9,000 square foot lots. And I get that not everybody, although the folks that are developing out in southwestern Schertz would disagree that large lots aren't selling. We have a need for less expensive homes, but I think we've gone too far with this one. I think there are too many small lots in this one. 636 total homes. And, you know, talking about the schools, because I think I see the handwriting on the wall. This is, you know, we're done with the estate development, you know, that stuff that the comprehensive plan wanted. I think that's gone. I think what we're going to see, even if we redo the comp plan, I think what we're going to see is residential. But that doesn't mean we need to swing it all the way and unless, I mean, if council wants to go back to R6 and R7, who am I to say no? They're the folks in charge of the city. But until then, one of the approval considerations here, whether the proposed PDD promotes the health, safety, or general welfare of the city and the safe, orderly, efficient, healthful development of the city. I'm not sure at this point. Commissioners, anything else?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
I'll echo everything our chairman has said. I wanted to say it, but he did it a lot better than I could. Referencing the staff analysis that he talked about earlier, I wasn't very comfortable about how all these changes took place, because 10 years ago, when council made a conscious decision to move away from R6, R7, there was a lot of discussion and a lot of back and forth about making that conscious decision to do that. This change doesn't seem to be the same way. I wasn't involved in the conversations that you referenced. I don't know how detailed they were, how many facts and analysis there were, but I think there's only one councilman who was on council back when all this was done. What I'd like to ask about, let me find it. Staff agrees with City Council that property owners in Southern Schertz should have a significant influence on the future development goals of Southern Schertz. How about Central? How about Old Schertz? How about the North? How about the industrial area?
Yeah, I think so.
Are we gonna make the same blanket statement for the rest of the city?
So I will say, Councilman, and I think I can appreciate Commissioner Outlaw's kind of comments, and if, I think if not for the pandemic, we likely would have had that joint council P&Z work session to try to get on the same page. As it is, we've been trying to do a joint Parks Council meeting for about 5-6 months and continue to have to push it back as the numbers rise. And so, yeah, I agree. I think that would be helpful to have that conversation, to have council be able to say, this is how we're approaching it, P&Z be able to hear it and be able to understand that. And yeah, but I think many of you attend council meetings, you watch the videos, you watch the tapes after the fact, and you may recall that, initially when the comp plan amendment came forward, staff was not supportive of it. And there was a lot of discussion at council about their philosophy toward that. It went beyond doing the comp plan amendment now and what we see wanting to do going forward that I think has shaped this. And yeah, I think frankly what you heard from council, and not everybody was unanimous with it, was the challenges in terms of impact on home values, impact on development pattern, things like that, and where we're headed as a community. And I think, I don't think anybody on council criticized the decision to not allow the R6 and R7s, but that doesn't mean that decision, because it was made, should be in stone going forward. I think what council has been saying, and we've heard it from the commission, is we want a variety of lot sizes. We don't have any garden homes, we don't have any townhomes, we don't have any duplexes. Where are folks, as they retire and kids move out of the houses, empty nesters, where can they downsize to and stay to the community? And we have struggled with that as a community. And you're right, it's because of our development standards, it's because of some of these codes. And that's not to say we've hit the perfect balance with that. I think staff is watching it to see what council does in reaction to this. You're right, they may come back and say, it is too many lots at 636. We want to drop it down to 550 or something like that. And I think, it's easy to say we have these conversations and everybody sees the light and we're all on the same page, and that's often not what happens. You kind of muddle through and you kind of veer and kind of settle back out where you want. I think, our impression of the council is they want that variety of lot sizes. They want to allow smaller lots. They don't want to go straight zoning with garden home over the whole tract of land, and the PDD allows us to look at that lot pattern and layout, and we get a better product, which is why pretty much every residential development we do is a PDD, because we can dictate lot pattern, because lot pattern and street pattern drive so much, as opposed to straight zoning. So this isn't us saying this is perfect, but I think what we have said is council offered a basis for why they were amending the comp plan. And while it was clear, and it was made clear, it wasn't a vote on the zoning, they knew what was planned for here and they made comments about it. And so you're right, I think staff is waiting to see what council does. And if they come back and go, yeah, why are you presenting this? Why is staff supporting this? We'll go back and say, we misread that one, we're wrong. The same way that P&Z will look at it if council says, yep, this is what we're shooting for. You guys will take that under consideration going forward as well. And I think the key then is, much like council made a wise decision at one point to say no more R6 and R7, as we begin this process to update the UDC and the comp plan to say, what do we need to have that's different? Maybe we allow R7s or R6s or some R6.5. It fits with what we need and where we are going as a community in those sort of challenges, so that we can say, what are those practical things we hear about and how do we try to mitigate those going forward? And so I don't disagree. I also don't disagree that likely we'll see the estate element of the comp plan go away. I think that was kind of where we headed. Now, maybe not everywhere, but I think in some areas we will. So again, I think staff listens to what P&Z says, we listen to what City Council says, and we felt like they told us a lot and have told us a lot with a number of cases recently. Ideally, you're right, we'd be a year and a half from now, we've amended the comp plan, we've amended the UDC, and we'd all be on the same page. But it never happens that cleanly.
No, and I understand what I would be a lot more comfortable with, and this may be a test case. You know, we may learn something from how council reacts to this. I would not be in favor of ever reinstating R6 and R7 to where somebody could just go buy 200 acres and do R7. But by the same token, it would be nice if we had some concept that, okay, if you can go no more than 25%, you want to do a PDD, it can be no more than 25% R7, no more than 25%, you know, in other words, if I had some guidelines to go by. Because I think I've said it before, I understand, I get it. Council wants more diverse, a better choice of lot sizes. But I don't know where that line went. See, I don't know if we moved it from here all the way over to here, or just here. Let me ask another question, and I apologize, I probably should have asked this question first. When I'm looking at your memo and your application submittal date, this thing went through 1, 2, 3, it went through 4 iterations before this one came in. So what happened during, what did you guys do during that process?
A variety of changes. And I will say it's similar to what most projects go through. You know, we had conversations about the amount of buffering along the FM 3009 extension. We had conversations about access and multiple ways in and out and the effect of the layout. We had conversations about whether those would be city parks or private amenities. Standard sort of stuff is what I would say. Really no different than what we did with Greytown Estates, what we did with Homestead. It's a very similar process. But I will say, and this is maybe the other, is, yeah, to some degree, I think the impression staff has from hearing council, and hearing P&Z, frankly, as well, is, you know, I've sort of said this before, there's no right or wrong answer, communities just change. But I think we often felt like whenever something happened that we didn't entirely like, we kind of reacted with, well, how do we regulate so that never happens again? And you've heard me talk about this. When you write a regulation, you write it to say, well, how much am I willing to allow to sort of slip through and get around the ordinance? And if you don't have much of a tolerance for that at all, you can write a very tight, very strict ordinance. But what that's going to do is it's going to hang up people who you weren't intending to, where you say, well, that wasn't what I meant. Yep, but we wrote the ordinance so tight. And I think part of what we've done with a lot of this, where we've kind of moved, is to really try to reduce and eliminate the unknowns with a residential layout. And so I'll use the example of Greytown Estates, because we had a lot of discussion there. We didn't lock that pattern in with the Greytown Estates. That was sort of a different thing for us and a bit of a change. It was larger lots, and we sort of said, then we're not going to lock in exactly those lot sizes and that layout like we have on others. And that was kind of part of that shift to say, yeah, there'll be parts of that we probably don't like. We'll probably be at TSAC going, yep, we got a speeding issue on this one section of Greytown, and it's because this happened. And it's not great, but, you know, I don't know that we could have prevented it, because we still have speeding issues, and I don't know that we would have wanted to try to regulate it so much to prevent it and what the implications of that are. So I agree, there's no right or wrong answer. I said this to a council person. It is always a tough, painful, frustrating experience to go through when you get these sort of shifts in policy and direction, because there's no right or wrong answer. There are implications, and often people don't have this very clear thing that they can articulate. It's the, I kind of know it, I kind of see it. I think most on council say, yeah, we don't want a bunch of R6 and R7s. But they'll also probably say, you know, we hear that number, the school district touts that the new median home value in SCUC ISD in Schertz is $290,000. And you're right, we have some big lots down in southwest Schertz, but we also have the majority of those being veteran homestead exemptions, which sort of explains kind of how people are able to afford it. And so how are we going to be a sustainable community where we have a variety of housing types, housing values, and things like that? And I think where we had tried to deal with it is we had tried to create one development that had that whole mix. And I think what we're sort of seeing is that's kind of hard to do, that you'll have a Greytown Estates, generally much larger, and then you'll have some projects like Saddlebrook that are much smaller. And we just have to find that balance, and we kind of have to muddle through. So I don't disagree with what's been said. I just think what we're trying to do is we're entering in that process to say, hey, what we were doing wasn't wrong, but we can't not continue to change and grow and deal with the problems ahead of us. And I think the big one is, how do we maintain a nice community, but yet it's a nice community that our kids can move to and live going forward, and it's a muddle through. And so, yeah, Steph is waiting to see what council does on this one. I think P&Z is the same thing, and I will tell you, I think council wants to hear these comments. They may not agree with them, but it helps them to know, okay, these are sort of the issues. How do we articulate that to P&Z? How do we get on board? How do we mitigate the problem? So,
Thank you, Brian.
Can I just ask one more question, and then I'll be done?
Sure, go ahead.
Could we, Rhine Valley, the subdivision's right next to Saddlebrook. What's the, I can't remember, what was the acreage of the Rhine Valley project, and how many lots are in that development?
I don't know, I'd have to look it up.
Well, let me jump in here and say that's not a good one to look at, because we inherited that one. That project was started in unincorporated Bear County, and we inherited it when we annexed the land. So there are some, if you were to look at Rhine Valley, you're going to see that there's a lot of things that don't comply with our.
I think Homestead or Parklands is a better example of those to me are the ones that we kind of hold up, and when a developer, residential developer walks in, we kind of go, what are y'all looking for? We kind of go, can be different, but Homestead, Parklands are what we're looking for. And that is less dense, fewer lots per acre than this, bigger median and mean lot size than this.
And again, we've allowed in PDDs, I think Crossvine, probably Howie's Cove, if we were to look at that, we've allowed a certain number of smaller lots. So again, what I'm concerned with here is that only 20% of that, you know, almost 80% of this is the small lot development, and that's what my concern is.
And I think that's good that you're
But
voicing this.
We don't really, yeah, the trouble is we don't really know what that number is.
That's right. And I think we're going to turn to
So-
kind of Tiffany with the minutes of this, and now that we video record it, council can watch. And I think that's the kind of comment they need to hear, to look at this and say, is it too many small lots? Or do they say, you know, having one with a bunch of small lots, that's not necessarily the end of the world. I don't know what they're going to do, but I think what we have heard from council is what we were doing for, we need to modify. I think we've been hit by the pandemic, and we've not been able to get together again. Like I said,
Yeah.
we can't get a joint Parks Board meeting.
Oh, I agree 100% with that, and, you know, I've always felt that some of our requirements are just too nitpicky and,
Yeah.
you know, too black and white, and so I don't disagree that we,
It's just
that we
where
need to be a little more
where that
flexible.
balance is. I will say one last thing real quick is, keep in mind when we compare to the crossline, the crossline is in a TERS, and that makes a huge difference in terms of what it looks like and it feels like, because we are returning that increment to the developer.
and again, I like to hold that one up, but if you look at the original part, the original development in Crosswine, it's just a long box with straight streets.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you compare it to this and kind of go, wow, we're doing better. And I think we are.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
I've got some more. If I wanted to read and look at what the current future development goals for Southern Schertz are, where could I find that?
you would find them in the comp plan. But let me say this.
As they exist today in the comp plan, or have they been revised?
That is in the current comp plan. But what I would do, in this other case, is I would tell you, council has said and funded an update to the comp plan because they think it needs to be updated. And I will point you to comments where they've considered it and other discussions for the record where they have said, here are the things that we need to do different with our community. And that's all perfectly fine, and that's how this stuff works. Again, we like to think we have this clean document that we always keep up to date, and it makes everything clear, and that's just not the way it works in practice. You shift, you modify, you muddle through.
So when Nick talks about, makes a reference to the future development goals of Southern Schertz, is he referring to the comp plan as it exists today? Or
He's referring to the amendment council made for this section.
So that's the current future. That's why I asked, where can I find
Yeah,
those?
that is, but again, Councilman, I'm going to say, you're not going to find text in the comp plan
Okay.
that clearly articulates that amendment to the future land use plan.
So as a planning and zoning commissioner, where can I go to find that? I can't find it anywhere.
You won't find it anywhere.
Thank you very much.
And
I got another one.
let me make a comment real quick. I just want to say, I can't speak for the other commissioners, but now I've seen that. We as a commission recommended denial on 2 amendments, and council has overridden that and approved them. So I think that signal is fairly clear. Okay? Go ahead, Richard.
Just a curiosity, why are we limiting the houses that front the major arterials to 25% to be 2-story?
So it's part of the aesthetic of it. So again, one of the things that we heard that I think council would still say is we don't want, as you're driving along our arterials, to see this overly massive amount of houses creeping in on you. And prior to this, what we did is said we wanted bigger lots, we want greater side yard setbacks, and we push them back so you don't feel as. And I think what we're trying here is, well, another way to do it is limit those to provide some as opposed to all. And so again, I'm going to be clear, council may look at that and go, y'all have missed the mark, staff. Or they may say, no, that's fairly creative. It's kind of like Halley's Cove. Without the screening wall, we did the greater landscape buffer. And we all may think that's a good idea or a bad idea, and it may get built, and half of us may go, I told you so, that's a horrible idea, or see, that turned out pretty neat. I don't know what it'll be. All we've got to do is adjust.
Well, you can visualize this stretch of whatever we want to call it, road. All you have to do is drive up Schertz Parkway. And I'll put another green check mark in the PDD because that limiting, I missed that. I mean, I read it, but I didn't really think of it as a plus. But actually, when I drive up Schertz Parkway, I don't think a whole lot about the two-story homes. What I think about is all the commercial we gave up to allow the houses to build up against it, but, okay.
And then ironically, we have a battle every time the commercial comes into development.
Yeah, so,
I'm done, Mr. Outlaw. Thank you for your comments. Appreciate the way you
All
did
right.
that.
Commissioners, anything else?
I do have a question
Go ahead.
for my fellow commissioners here. In my very first meeting, I think I've got less experience than everyone here. I'm the newest person on the board. The very first meeting that I sat on was for Dorado Apartments behind Santikos. And we had a similar issue where the development's coming in and just getting smaller and smaller and smaller. The UDC, section 12.12.1, under applicability, B3, specifically states our responsibility is to be consistent and equitable patterns of development among neighboring parcels of land. If we keep going down this road where our pattern is to make more and more houses fit into a development, we're setting a status quo for future development. I think this is kind of along the lines of where you're going, Mr. Outlaw. So what are we losing by approving this? Going forward, we're losing our ability to maintain the size of those lots in future development, because the next builder can come back and say, here's the pattern of development that you've already approved?
Yes, that's certainly a concern, and you know, I spent a good portion of my life where I had to worry about setting a precedent. And Brian, you've heard me say this before. We try to look at each and every case individually on its own merits, but I understand where Mr. Platt is coming from. I had that thought and didn't voice it, is that if we allow 80% small lot in this development, how do we not allow that in the next one that comes along and the one after that? So that's certainly something we have to be concerned with. Again, I think this is going to be a learning experience. I called it earlier, I called it a test case. I think what we need to do tonight as a commission is we need to come up with a recommendation to City Council based on the development guidelines and again, the UDC, I'm not going to dig it back out again, but there's like 10 things to consider when you look at a PDD. So what we need to do tonight is as a group provide a recommendation for either approval or denial to City Council, and then sit back and see what they do with it. Okay? They'll either agree with us or they won't. And, maybe in that discussion there'll be some guidance. Okay?
One other clarification. You had mentioned that the city council had restricted the use of R5, R6.
R6 and R7.
Did they do that by?
They did it by ordinance, and basically, I could dig the ordinance back out, but basically what they did is they said no more R6, no more R7. They grandfathered anything that was laying out there, but from that date forward, basically they could have taken R6 and R7 out of the UDC, but I assume we've left it in there for legacy and other reasons. Okay.
So the other concern that immediately pops in my head, and I'll find it for you, is the UDC specifically states that we cannot pass anything that's in violation of city ordinance.
Yes, that's true, except a planned development district is a special case. It's in the UDC, and that section of the UDC allows the variation in all kinds of things. Okay, lot sizes, I mean, just about anything. So a PDD by the UDC does not have to comply with the lot dimensions and the zoning and the other requirements of a specific zoning class. So in a way, while yes, so we're not violating the ordinance that said no more R6 because we're not approving R6 and R7. I brought that up I use those zonings as a comparison for the lot sizes that are proposed in this PDD. Does that make sense?
But we're just calling it something other.
What we're going to do is we're going to recommend approval or denial of this planned development district. We're not approving R6, we're not approving R7. I only use those for comparative purposes. Okay?
So we're approving or disproving the rezoning to planned development district. We're not approving or disproving 600 and some lots. That'll come later, correct?
Right. There's, what follows is a master plan, correct? Yeah,
Zoning, to be clear, the zoning kind of locks this in.
right.
And so my answer would have been, yeah, you're approving 636 lots with the approval of this planned development district.
Yeah, what we're really doing, because you heard Nick say it earlier, this PDD contains 3 base zoning classifications. Okay? Garden home, there's no variances other than they increase the driveway width. The garden home is 50 by 100, and that's what they're proposing. The other residential areas, the base zoning would be R1, which is 10,000, 9,000. But then what we do with the PDD is we amend R1 to allow the SF55, the SF60, and the SF70s. Does that make sense? Yes, no?
Yes, to a point. We're recommending approval to the council or disapproval to the council to rezone this to plan to PDD.
Correct.
Okay? And what they do with it is what they do with it. Now, can they send that back for any more discussion from the Planning and Zoning Commission?
If they deny it, typically they would give the reasons why. And so the applicant then could come back in and hearing that could start over and come back in with something different than this that they think they mentioned it. So again, if council says, yeah, you're right, I don't want to make them do quite as big as we've been doing, but 636 is too many. We'd rather have about 550. They can deny it. He hears that message, comes back in with that, tries again, or gives up and goes to.
I believe we did that with Rhine Valley, and we did it with Parklands, didn't we?
You did it with Parklands, yeah.
Well, Rhine Valley was
Parklands,
supposed
too,
to
I'm
be
sorry.
700 lots, and it turned out to be 5-something.
Yeah, I'd have to go back.
Yeah,
Rhine Valley is a bit of a weird
it
one.
was.
But it happens. People get denied, and they'll come back in and modify the requirement and try again. And again, that's where I think we're all trying to kind of feel out where council is on these.
Good. This is a zoning change request, right? So if we approve this or recommend approval to council to change this to PDD, do we then come back and have to approve the PDD document itself? Because that's a whole nother section of the UDC.
No, sir, that's if that's what we're working on tonight is the PDD document.
So
Okay.
what is section 10 of the UDC then? What's 21.510 about? Land Development District.
It's the Plan
Well,
Development District section. So
Go ahead.
let me say this, and maybe this helps clarify. In theory, you have another option. Rather than just a straight approval or denial, you could recommend approval with changes to the standards. Instead of 636 lots, we'll give you a 520 lots or something. I wouldn't recommend that because I think it affects the applicant's whole pro forma, the layout, they'd come back with a different. I think what the applicant really wants is give me an up or down on it. Let me go to council, see what they do. I want them to give me an up or down. If they give me a down, I'll listen to all the comments, and then let me go back and rework this thing and get something that works for me as opposed to kind of shoehorn in something that doesn't work. So technically, you could do that. And so often you'll hear applicants get up here and they'll say, yeah, I'm okay with that. We can change that and we'll tweak it. I think in this case, the applicant would say, just give me an up or down on it. Because if we start playing with things, he's got to go back and do all this work to see if it's still kind of pro forma for him or not. And I think from a staff perspective, we're all kind of waiting to see what council does. I have no idea where they'll go with it.
I would remind our commissioners, in case we haven't been up here long enough, that when somebody decides to do a PDD, once that PDD comes to you and you have approved it, it is supposed to be the equivalent of a complete rewrite of your UDC, because it has to cover whether you're going to have the 2 tree requirements, okay, what the setbacks are going to be on their piece of property, the size of their piece of property, how they're going to do the streets, okay? All of that becomes a replacement for what is in our UDC. The UDC no longer has an impact. It's the PDD that's been written. And in that document, they're supposed to address every paragraph of our UDC. All right? So when this thing comes before us as a PDD, once it leaves here tonight, if we recommend approval, for example, and City Council says, yeah, that's it. It's whatever they have written in that document that becomes the rules by which we developed this subdivision. No longer has anything about the UDC. Now, they can say in it that this paragraph, they intend to comply with the UDC. This paragraph, they intend to comply with the UDC. And should they do so, then the UDC is the document that just sets the pieces for that particular paragraph or action or whatever it is. So this thing is a zoning, and it is whatever is written, I'll call it, it's the new Bible for this piece of property.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. So, Mr. Broad, to answer your question, no, the zoning request is the PDD. And just to expand a little bit on Mr. Evans, in the interest of brevity, what the developers choose to do, and these are my words, is basically they say, Saddlebrook PDD. All provisions of the Schertz Unified Development Code apply except, and then they show the things that, so basically that's what you were saying. Now, Section 10 or whatever you were talking about in the UDC, that just simply defines a PDD and tells you how to apply and what we should be looking for in a PDD. That's kind of the how to do it. The PDD itself, and if it's included in the packet, it's, I don't know, 10 or, I've got it here, I don't remember how many pages it is. Oh. But that's what we're acting on tonight, is the zoning request is the PDD. So if we have nothing else, what I need, again, is a recommendation for either approval or denial of this PDD as a zoning change request to City Council. Which number is it? No, I think just a motion to recommend approval or denial of ZC 2019-010 would do the trick. I don't think we need to lay out all the... Well, I mean, here's the funny thing about the way this works. You only have to justify a no vote if you vote against whatever the motion is, okay? So for instance, if we were to recommend approval and you voted nay, the staff would ask you for a reason. If we choose to recommend denial and you vote aye, you don't have to give a reason, okay?
Actually, Commissioner, we may not have done a good job kind of clarifying.
Okay,
If you recommend against approving an item, we'd like a reason. And so if it helps, because this is what I've heard is, if there were to be a motion to deny, it's because we think there are too small lots on this project. To me, that's it in a nutshell. That seems to be the issue. There may be some other things, but fundamentally, too many lots and they're too small. And so I think that would be sufficient on a motion of denial. The applicant has certainly heard all of the discussion. Council can listen to all of the discussion and hear some of the more nuanced items and concerns about precedent and access and circulation and things like that.
The reason for denial should be a summary of what all of the commissioners inputted, not just one of us. So it should be a summary of everything we've said.
well, yeah, but it's kind of up to the commissioner that makes the motion. You know, Brian, Mr. James made a good suggestion. If you look in the UDC, section F, criteria for approval, there are 7 different things that we as a commission should consider. You could pick one of those. Again, assuming you want to recommend denial. Or you could just flat out say why you're making the motion that you're making. You know? And again, as Mr. James pointed out, council, you know, this will be a video recording. Council can watch the entire discussion if they're interested. The last time we had what I will, maybe controversial isn't the right word, but the last time we had something, staff did a very good job of preparing the memo for City Council articulating the commission's thought process. And I would expect them to do that again this time. Okay. So,
I make a motion to approve the recommendation to rezone the PD, or the 229 acres PDD, known as Saddlebrook Ranch.
okay, just so I'm clear, from Commissioner Haynes, that's a recommendation to City Council to approve ZC 2019-010, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Second.
And that was Commissioner Broad, okay. So I have a motion and a second to recommend approval to City Council. Do I have any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote.
I will abstain from the vote. Do I have to give you a justification of why? Correct.
Yes, you can abstain, but unless it's a legally required abstention, the actual vote will count as a nay. Okay, is that okay? All right, so Commissioner Braun?
Aye.
I'm sorry?
Aye.
Aye?
Nay.
Nay from Commissioner Greenwald. Mr. Odom?
Nay.
Aye.
Nay.
And I will vote nay. So that's 2 ayes and 5 nays. So the motion to recommend approval is disapproved. Now, procedural question, do we just let that go forward, or? Okay. Now, do you want reasons for the nay votes on that? Okay. Okay, well, here's what I would suggest. I can't make a motion from the chair. What I would like, or what needs to happen now is, well, actually, anybody can make the motion to deny, but I would expect one of the other four commissioners, other than myself, one of the other four commissioners now make a motion to recommend denial, and one of the other, and another one of the four second it. That's what needs to happen.
I'll make a motion to deny ZC 2010-010,
Okay, a motion to,
2019.
all right, a motion for denial, or to recommend denial, because I know Mom's listening, so I gotta make sure I remember that. Right? A motion to recommend denial from Commissioner Greenwald. Any second?
I'll second it.
And second from Commissioner Odom. All right. Floor is open again for discussion.
As a procedural issue, since I abstained from the first vote, must I also abstain from the second vote, or does that?
No, you're free to vote however you feel. All right, no further discussion. Call for the vote.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
Aye. Nay.
Aye.
And I will also vote aye, so that's 5 ayes and 2 nays. The motion to recommend denial to City Council is approved. Now, do you want the reasons for the nay votes on that one? Okay. So who voted nay that time? Commissioner?
I voted nay.
Okay. Can you articulate?
I really need, and it's confusing. It's not yay or nay votes. The nay votes have to give a reason. It's when you recommend denial of an item, I need the reasons for denial.
Okay.
So
All right.
I need their reasons.
Okay.
Why we're denying it.
So who voted? So,
In conformance with, again, as stated, Article 12, Bravo 3, the precedent standard, as well as the deviation from approving lot sizes in the correct, R6 and R7.
Commissioner Greenwald?
Feel that the 636 lots that are shown here in the lot count are excessive and need to be cut back.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Odom?
Too high of a percentage of small lots causing undesirable higher density housing in that area, and also I do not want to set a precedence for future development in that area.
Yes, sir. Mr. Evans?
Well, in addition to the number of lots, I'm going to say because we aren't ready for this size development in terms of sewer, streets, and so forth in this area of town.
Thank you. And I guess to summarize, my reasons for recommending denial are basically too many small lots. I think we went too far the other way. All right. So that takes care of item 5. Item 6, items for individual consideration. PC 2021-002, consider and act upon a request for approval of a preliminary plat of the Halley's Cove Subdivision Unit 4A, an approximately 8.23 acre tract of land generally located approximately 640 feet southeast from FM 1518, City of Schertz, Bear County, Texas.
Good evening.
Megan?
So yes, this is the Halley's Cove Unit 4A preliminary plat. My name is Megan Harrison, planner in the Planning Community Development. So, just to provide an aerial, the Halley's Cove Unit 4A subject property is in green, and 1518 is here, and then the rest of Halley's Cove subdivision is to the north of that. The applicant is proposing to preliminary plat approximately 8.23 acres. This would be establishing 25 single-family residential lots, which would comply with the Halley's Cove PDD. There are 3 points of access to this property. The first one being the Halley Loop, and then the second one being the Halley River. Both of those were recorded with Unit 2. The third one would be the Halley's Crest, which would be coming down from over here. Was recorded with Unit 3. The site will be serviced by Schertz Water, CPS, AT&T, and Time Warner Cable. The sewer will be serviced by the City of Schertz and treated by the CCMA. Once the lines to the future wastewater treatment plant in the southern Schertz are constructed. In the interim, the applicant has entered into an agreement with the city for the pump and haul wastewater service. So this one does have, you can see here, that is the location of the pump and haul service. At this time, staff does recommend approval of the preliminary plat for Halley's Cove Unit 4A, as it has been reviewed by Fire, Engineering, Public Works, and Planning, and it does meet all UDC and PDD, Halley's Cove PDD requirements.
All right, thank you very much. Commissioners? Any questions, discussion? All right, if there are no questions or no discussion, Chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve PC 2021-002.
I have a motion to approve from Mr. Odom. Do I have a second?
I second.
All right, who is that? Ken Greenwald? Okay, Mr. Greenwald. Any other discussion or questions, commissioners? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. 7 ayes, none opposed. That motion passes. Item number 7, requests and announcements. Requests by commissioners to place items on a future planning and zoning agenda. Hearing none. Item B, announcements by commissioners. Any announcements? Item C, announcements by city staff. Don't think you didn't have anything, right? Okay. All right, there be no further business. This meeting's adjourned.